Polipede works here. I tell you, that SBS stuff just don't stop coming. Now, does it? Let's get into it.
The years start coming and they don't stop 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 coming.
So, this chapter starts off with the continuation of Law versus the Blackbeard Pirates. And I guess I should put some respect on the Heart Pirates and say it's the continuation of the confrontation between the Heart Pirates and the Blackbeard Pirates, because weirdly enough, the Heart Pirates show now that they aren't slouches, which I've got to ask, where were they all during the Onigashima conflict? Very strange. Okay, well, they did save Luffy, but you didn't really get any sort of insight as to what they can do. The very interesting part about this is we see a new ability from Blackbeard. He has something called a Quake Crash, which just seems to be a weird extension of Newgate's Quake Punch, as it does affect the Heart Pirates on the ground. Sadly, though, Stronger does get cut in half by Law, but he's not dead, of course, because, you know, Law's amputation is sort of like a bloodless amputation. So I do predict, no matter what happens in this confrontation, Stronger will be put back together. Then we get a callback to when, well, actually two callbacks if you think about it. There's a callback to Dot Q's apple bombs, which is kind of sick, but those apple bombs were deflected by Sachi, the guy in the orca hat. Okay, so here's the funny thing about Sachi. He goes into the water, he sucks up a whole bunch of water, becomes very rotund, and shoots these big water pistol blasts at the apple bombs. This could be like a twofold callback because it reminds me of Water Luffy and his water pistol attack. It also reminds me of Chu, the kissing fishman from the Arlong Pirates way back in the Arlong Park arc. He's the sniper of the Arlong Pirates that fought Usopp. And he too sucked up a whole bunch of water, became very rotund and balloon-like, and pelted the tree line where Usopp was hiding with a bunch of high-pressure water bullets. So this reminds me of that. Humans doing something that a fishman could do, or a regular human doing something that Luffy could do as a rubber person, is very odd, but I like it. I was very taken aback when this happened because I didn't think he would do anything like that. Okay. Here's another fun thing. I don't know what this means for John Bart, but he was able to block a shot from Van Auger, which I don't know if he has armament hockey or not, or his body is just big so he can take gunshots no problem. Either way, that's a very interesting ability to have, and as Van Auger mentions, he is quite the bodyguard, which so far he's been kind of like the secondary premier Heart Pirate next to Beppo. I don't know if I would call him like the Sanji of the group, but he's kind of close. I mean, I could see someone thinking that. Okay, so here's what happens next. Blackbeard gets caught up by Shock Willie. Now, it seems I've gone off track, so we're going to wind it back to the start where we see the cover story, because it actually ties into the events of the chapter presently, which is a first, I think, because usually if an event ties in the cover story or is a callback to the cover story, it's usually like hundreds of chapters apart. It's never like right after the other, or the ongoing conflict in the cover story relates to events happening in the present arc. This never happens. So this is a treat. We see that Kuzan was indeed the cause of Chocolate Town being frozen over. So, kudos to you. You all correct. You have my admiration. You got it. The Occam's razor answer turned out to be the correct answer. No big surprise. So yeah, GG, good game. I love Kuzan's fit. It's kind of like his hobo fit that we see in Punk Hazard, but now he's kind of decked out with a fancy shirt and a cape, kind of looking like Sanji during Whole Cake, which is funny, seeing as how we're talking about Whole Cake things in this chapter. And Pudding is tied up with Van Auger and Kuzan standing over her. Now, here's a very interesting part about Kuzan being a part of the Blackbeard Pirates. Based on how the Titanic Captain thing was announced back in Dressrosa, I do not think Kuzan is a Titanic captain. He may be a part of the crew, he may be a crew member, he may be an associate, like a Bartolomeo, a very close associate, maybe, or just like a regular member. But I don't think he's like of that sort of trusted circle of the 10 Titanic captains. Because Kuzan, like the warlords and like the Yonko, an admiral is a very public figure, a very well-known figure in the One Piece world. So that would be such a big headline that a former admiral has joined a Yonko crew. I mean, you can't really write around that. You can't really write around that as a concept. That would have to be like a premiere thing announced when it happened. Like, it's so big that when Jinbei tells Luffy that Blackbeard had became a Yonko over the 2-year time skip, that would have to be something that he mentioned to Luffy, because of course Luffy knows Kuzan. He fought him way back in Long Ring Long Land, and then they had a few little confrontations in the War of the Best in the Marineford arc. So it's just interesting that if he is a Titanic captain, it's kind of a weird placement. So I'm still going to say that Stronger is a Titanic captain, and there's a group of people that follow the horse. And that's not ridiculous, seeing as how in Shanks' crew, Monster, the monkey that's on Bonk Punch's shoulder, he too is an officer. The monkey's an officer in Shanks' crew. So why can't the horse be an officer in Blackbeard's crew? You kind of see what I'm saying? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If the monkey can be an officer on the Yonko crew, so can the horse. So yes, I still think Stronger is the 10th Titanic captain, because if he wasn't, and if it was Kuzan would have made the news like as Blackbeard was announced to be a Yonko. That would have been kind of hand in hand. Even if it was after like Punk Hazard doing Dressrosa, it would have been a thing. It would have been like a side conversation where Burgess and Blackbeard are talking about not trusting Kuzan because of his prior alignment with the Marines. That wouldn't have happened. So yeah, I'm still like, no, he might be a member or an associate. From the cover page, it's clearer that he is most likely a member, but he's not a Titanic captain. He's not in Blackbeard's trusted circle. So, getting back to the chapter proper, Blackbeard gets attacked by Shock Willie, goes right through him. He is not having it. It's coughing up blood, so it was effective. Van Augur saves him, showing that Van Augur with this Warp fruit is the MVP. Good lord. All the Warp fruits are good assists. This is still giving me like heavy Usopp vibes, because if you recall, I don't know how many people watched it, but like the movie Stampede, the one where Luffy fights Douglas Bullet, right? There's a point in the movie where Usopp, and spoilers for the movie if you care about that, there's a point in the movie where Usopp uses a pop green shot and he shoots into the joints of Douglas Bullet's giant mecha, right? This comes into prominence later when Douglas Bullet is about to attack, and I think one of the more basic forms of his mech gets caught up by the vines of Usopp's shot that he placed earlier. So I say that to say is Van Augur is giving me Usopp vibes, because like Usopp, and like Usopp says in that movie, like snipers are meant to be assistants or pull-off assists. This is proving it here. Van Augur is a great assist. He's backup. He's the best backup because he can pull people out of dangerous situations very quickly. But yeah, I like him. And Van Augur is giving Blackbeard a bit of his mind, saying, we came in half-cocked, you want to get out of here? And Blackbeard's like, no, all day, every day, we're going in, we're coming for what we came for. Which, that's the Blackbeard way, that makes sense. Blackbeard touches down, and we get a little panel of Pudding saying that if Mama's still alive, she would make you all shut up. Which makes me think, like I believe I've said a few times before, Big Mom's not dead. She can't be dead. Because we're going over Whole Cake Island stuff too much now for her to be dead. I think between her and Kaido being alive, she's most likely to be alive, because then too, she's got other like plot points that need to be gone through with the whole Elbath thing. So I would still say wait and see on her. But yeah, Law chooses to use Shock Willie to clash with Blackbeard's Quake Punch. And Blackbeard pulls out the Black Vortex, and then we cut to Sakazuki being mad that he can't be a wild hog anymore and be in the middle of conflicts because he has to uphold a starling reputation as the fleet admiral and set an example for those who work under him. So too bad, Sakazuki. You got the job, you got responsibilities, you got to deal with it. Okay, we go back to Egghead, right? On Egghead, Luffy has been transformed into a 70-year-old. So we've got another point in the SBS joke bucket. I'm going to do a little video on which ones are left, because of the ones that are left, I think it's going to make a lot of people mad and a lot of people happy, because it's going to confirm a joke theory. A joke theory is going to confirm a joke theory in part, I should say, about something that has been said for a few years now. So look forward to that. But yeah, Luffy is a 70-year-old in the bad timeline, because if you remember that SBS that shows different Straw Hats and other characters, I believe Ace and Sabo at different ages. This shows a good timeline where everybody turns into a cool big old guy, in a bad timeline where basically everyone turns into a old codger, except for like Sanji and Frankie. Frankie becomes a actual ship, and Sanji just becomes Judge. So yeah, and then Nami basically becomes the Don, which is very funny, and Robin actually really for real becomes Caramel, which is crazy. But yeah, I'm thinking about that too. Are we ever going to see Jinbei and Brook? Because I think who was left? It was, because we saw Chomper. We never seen. Speaking of Chomper, we see an old Chomper and his walk point, which is interesting because we have never seen this before, not even in the SBS stuff. It's always Chomper getting older in both timelines, as I presume to be his hybrid state. So the idea is that as he gets older, he turns into like basically a Snorlax looking thing from My Neighbor Totoro, or he turns into a very angry deer mink looking guy. But here he's just like a old regular deer, which is funny. And of course, Jinbei is turned into a child, which again, that's another SBS point. Well, it's been an SBS point throughout this entire arc, because we've seen that the Seraphim are all the warlords as children. So I wonder in the future, will we see a Seraphim Jinbei? Because I'm assuming, just based on the path that we've been on, that all the Seraphim are going to be based off of the original set of warlords, which numbered 7. So 7 Seraphim, same thing. Moving forward, Jinbei explains Kuma as a tyrant of the Sorbet Kingdom, a tyrannical king, was disposed by the people. His various crimes got him caught by the Navy. Then, when he got caught by the Navy, his association with the revolutionaries became apparent. And then, after that, Vegapunk saw something very interesting with his physical abilities, and that he was made a warlord because of Vegapunk's interest. So Vegapunk is very specifically tied to Kuma's ascension into becoming a warlord. You know what's very kind of disturbing about this description? Jinbei talks as if he knows everything about Kuma, which seems not to be the case. As Bonnie's like, yeah, I get all of that, but why would he turn himself into a mindless slave? It doesn't make sense. That's worse than a death sentence. And then Jinbei goes on to wonder if or what action of Kuma the Tyrant gave him the life sentence. And then Bonnie responds, her father wasn't a tyrant. He hated the world government, and they must have done some other persuasion or for him to go through what he went through. I'm kind of in agreement with Bonnie, because it's very presumptuous of Jinbei to seemingly know all of what Kuma was about, despite only hearing rumors about the man. Of course, his own daughter would know more about him than some stranger, but Jinbei is our exposition guy of worldly events, so that's what he does. Okay, I'm on Bonnie's side for the record. Oh, and Bonnie did turn herself to a little girl during her whole outburst, which turned Luffy and Chomper and Jinbei into 2 old guys and then a young guy. We still don't know how she does this, by the way, nor do we have a fruit name confirmed, which is a little interesting, because the only 2 fruits that have to be confirmed are Roge and Bonnie's. So I'm wondering if or when Bonnie's fruit will be confirmed, because it has been a minute. But we'll see. We'll see. I'm certain that Jinbei will go into asking her about what her abilities are, and then she'll give a formal explanation. You know what this reminds me of? When you first see the abilities back in Shibani Archipelago before the whole Kuma attack happens and we are introduced to all the members of the worst generation. When she's sitting on a rooftop laughing at all the Marines she's altered, just like here, the clothes aren't altered, nor are the weaponry. So the Marines back then were kids and old men, and their clothes and guns remained unaltered. Here, same thing. Chomper and Luffy's clothes are unaltered. So it makes me think, can she only affect living beings, like make them younger or older, or can she affect inanimate objects but chooses not to? Maybe she has to actually have another mode of her ability to do that. Because as things are going forward, it would just make more sense based on what we have, even though one of these isn't canon. Shinobu's fruit and Ain's fruit. Ain was the girl who served under Zephyr in Film Z. She had the ability to affect anything by 12 years going younger, though. Making things regress, anything regress 12 years younger. And then if it was a person and all they had was 12 years left, they would simply die and poof out of existence. Whereas with Shinobu, she can affect people and objects but make them older. So I'm wondering, seeing as how both of these people can affect objects going one way or the other, and Bonnie can affect people going both ways, does Bonnie have an ability to affect objects specifically, and can she make those objects like brand new or older? Something to think about, but I'm sure we'll actually see what that's about later on. Getting back to the chapter though, Bonnie picks up a beam sword. Everyone's pretty amazed by it, even though it's laying in a junkyard. Bonnie further denounces Vegapunk as a murderer, and then she says something very interesting as she somehow changes herself, Luffy, and Chomper back to their original ages. She says that Dad used to say he was a part of a special race. Now, in her saying that, it's very interesting that she says he was a part of a special race and not they were a part of a special race. This makes me think that Bonnie is most likely adopted, which fits into the themes of One Piece. Usually, blood relations aren't the topic of conversations. It's the family that you find or the family that finds you that matters. So Bonnie was most likely adopted by Kuma, which makes you think Kuma might not be all bad, especially seeing as how what he did on Shibani to the Straw Hats seems to be more for their benefit than their detriment, as it turns out. So she heads up a mission to confront Vegapunk and says that her father was part of a special race. And Chomper makes note of this too, as he finds it odd. Then we click back to the rest of the crew, who are being taken up by the Vega Force 1, which seems to have thrusters, which is pretty baller. That's pretty epic. I like that the robot can fly. That's cool. Very land, sea, and air of that robot. And it's huge because it's holding the ship in its like right hand, which is very cool. Hey, so here's a callback. As they land, they get new clothes and everyone looks fantastic. Meanwhile, Brook and Zoro stay on the ship. So the Straw Hats' new fits are immaculate. Robin looks the best if you ask me. Also, it's making me think more and more that Vegapunk really is related to Frankie in some way, because the Hawaiian shirts are really out of place, as Jinbei got one, which is kind of par for the course for Jinbei, but Sanji also got one, which gives me really heavy Skypiea vibes, which is very funny because Lilith goes into the explanation when they first land, and Frankie is completely unaware of this, but the ground seems to be made of island cloud, which we see back in Skypiea. Specifically, Lilith talks about how Vegapunk, was able to actually take the pyrobolin that you would find in Sky Islands and recreate the effect on this island. Pyrobolin was formally explained in chapter 240, and it's supposed to be a mineral you find within Sea's Prism Stone. So this is very interesting, but it makes sense because being sort of like the lead researcher in Devil Fruit technology, why wouldn't you research the thing that Devil Fruits are weak against? And this material specifically might be very important because if you remember back in 240, Luffy drowned in the sea clouds. So I'm guessing because the sea clouds contain pyrobolin, that might be the reason why they act the same as the ocean when someone is submerged in them, like a Delphi user. So Vegapunk isolated the Parabolan to make these island clouds on his island, or her island, because we don't really even know the true gender of Vegapunk yet. What's interesting here is that I wonder what else Parabola can do, because this is a very interesting callback. But yes, like I was saying, all the fits look great. It's very interesting that a Hawaiian shirt seems to be kind of a default outfit in the clothing fabricator's wardrobe. And yeah, it's a Skypiea callback because Sanji gets a Hawaiian shirt. And it's very cute and funny that Usopp compliments Robin on her outfit and says she looks tough. Robin looks better than Nami, if you ask me, because that tiny jacket is doing it for me. I love her tiny jacket. It's sick. Like the big sleeves, it's very good. Very, very good. Now, here's the very interesting part. We see Shaka, and yes, Shaka is a Daft Punk reference, not a Toriyama reference. He's very Daft Punk, as you can see. He has like the glass helmet with the 01 on it. He says that he might be dead soon, as he's talking to Dragon. Now, why does he say that? It could be that he senses his own death coming, which might be from natural causes, or he can sense that the CP0 might be on their way and they are coming to assassinate him. Now, it does make sense that he's talking to Dragon because of his really tightly knit entanglement with Kuma. Dragon would have to be involved as the leader of the Revolutionary Army. With that being said, two things that keep coming to mind. One about Zoro and Brook being on the ship, and the other about Koala. Here's the interesting thing. I wonder if there's going to be a C-plot with Brook and Zoro being on the ship. Why they chose to stay behind. I mean, Zoro doesn't trust Vegapunk, but why did Brook stay behind? I'm wondering, is this where we're going to get Carrot? Because the Carrot thing still bothers me. I'm sorry, it really does. Because she was the only one of the sort of Wano companions, or the companions they met throughout the whole saga, to not say goodbye. It's very interesting. So I think the C plot might result with her coming back, if that's a thing. I'm just putting it out there. It may not be a thing, but it seems very interesting if that was a thing and she was just being an expert hider this whole time. Could be a thing, but maybe not. Then, with Koala, it's just a little interesting that Bonnie is seeing Kuma as an adoptive father, presumably, but by Kuma's sort of involvement with the Revolutionary Army, I'm going to say that, and seeing as how Sabo was so upset to see Kuma in such a destitute state during the leveling, I'm going to say that Koala probably feels the same way Bonnie does about Kuma. In a way, both of them know two different versions of the man, but still, I'm going to say that Kuma, around that time, before he was completely brain wiped, was a good fatherly guy. So I really do hope Bonnie and Koala meet and they bond over the memory of Kuma. And I just want to see where this sort of storyline leads to, because it's very interesting to sort of tally up how many characters that have been involved with Kuma. And it's seeing more and more, as I've said before, that Kuma is becoming a very big keystone in a lot of people's lives. So I want to see how all this ties up together. With that being said, unfortunately, the kaiju known as Break has come forth to terrorize our manga-loving township. There is a break next week. I am very sorry, but there will be some videos coming down the pipe from me, so look forward to that. As far as the chapter goes, that's pretty much the end of it. I'm very excited to see what comes on later. But with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Please check out the Discord. I'm making mention of it more and more now in my end card. But yeah, see you next time. If you like stuff like this, please feel free to check out my YouTube channel, Polipede Works. And if you like what you see, I would appreciate your subscription. Thank you so much. See you next time.